Vacation time is over for the New England Patriots. They will be getting together, rookies first, then the veterans, as they prepare for the upcoming NFL season. But before that, they must go through training camp. To discuss camp, I'm here with Aaron Schatz from FootballOutsiders.com. Aaron, first off, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Hello, hello.
Very good. Now, the biggest question for the Patriots right now is Logan Mankins. After he demanded a trade and blasted the team and the organization for not keeping their word, will he be in attendance for training camp?
My guess is that they will smooth things out by the time that the preseason games start. So I don't know if he'll be there at the beginning. It's a weird situation. What you have this year is a series of players who are in their fourth and fifth seasons who normally would have been unrestricted free agents by now, but they're not because of the CBA situation. And they're all making threats of various kinds, whether it's Darrelle Revis, Vincent Jackson, Marcus McNeil, Mankins. Some of them are threatening holdouts into the season. Others are demanding trades. Historically, we're not quite sure what would happen because there haven't been situations like this before, but for the most part, players who demand trades and hold out rarely actually hold out into the season. I mean, there's only a couple who really have. Keenan McCardle a few years ago, the Terry Glenn, the DID year when I did it. But for the most part, these guys show up, and I think Mankins is going to show up too.
Well, in his absence, who will be competing for the left guard spot during camp?
It seems pretty clear that without Mankins there, they're going to get rid of the three-tackle rotation and strictly use Vollmer as right tackle and put Kazir inside at guard, which actually might be a better position for him because it means no more of those defensive end speed rushers, running past him and slapping the ball out of Brady's hands once a game. I have a feeling he can handle tackles a lot better than he can handle ends. I don't think they're going to be that badly off without Mankins unless a lot of injuries hit. Obviously it hurts their depth. But I think they could live without him. Obviously, it's better to have him there. He's a better player than Kazir, that's for sure.
Well, it's good to remember that Kazir came out of college as a guard. But moving on. Bill Belichick decided not to name an offensive coordinator nor a defensive coordinator. And he said he will be more hands-on this year. Will that make any changes to this year's camp?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that Bill O'Brien is really the offensive coordinator. I'm not sure why they're not giving him the title, but he basically does the job. Defensive coordinator is a little more complicated because they didn't want to have to choose Matt Patricia over Pepper Johnson. So in order to kind of keep them both in the fold, they went with no coordinator. And I'm guessing that is where Belichick is going to be more hands-on. On the offensive side, as far as young players that he's got to teach, really you just have the young tight ends and the young wide receivers, a couple of young wide receivers. But the defense is so filled with young players that I think that's where you're going to see Belichick be a lot more hands-on. I think offense is really Bill O'Brien's game at this point.
There was a lot of talk about the leadership or lack of leadership on this team. You can look at the defense and assume that Vince Wilfork, Gerard Mayo, Brandon Merriweather, the onus is on them to become leaders on this defense. Is there anybody else that could emerge as a leader for the defense?
Well, Warren, is the other veteran. I don't know much about personalities of guys. Obviously, I'm really a statistician more than I am, a psychologist. But those are the veterans. Warren, Wilfork, Merriweather. Mayo's really the same age as some of the other young guys. It's just that he's been in the starting lineup the first 2 years, and you naturally look towards your best players to be the leaders. And he's the guy that the defense is now designed around. If you think about the Belichick, and Brady era in Patriots history, it's going to eventually be separated into two periods. You'll have your Brady-Seymour years and your Brady Mayo years, which started last year. Just as Seymour was the signature player of this defense when they won the Super Bowls, Mayo's the signature player now. I don't know which of the young guys will emerge as leaders. Based on what we've read about their personalities in college, Brandon Spikes clearly was that kind of a player at Florida. You would expect him to develop into that kind of a player in the NFL as long as the on-field performance matches what he did in college. But as a rookie, I don't know if he'll step forward quite that much.
Wes Welker surprised a lot of people when he came out during the OTAs and actually practiced with the team, even though he wasn't going full speed. How much of him will we see during training camp And will he even play in the preseason games?
I doubt very much he'll play in the preseason, but you'll see him during training camp. I wasn't that surprised. Will Carroll, who does injury stuff for us as well as Baseball Prospectus, he talked about, first of all, that ACL recovery has taken less time in the last couple years than previous years. The other thing is Welker's roots involve a lot less cutting than people think. It's a lot more about the way that he positions his body to shield the ball from the defenders. It's a lot less about quick cuts. And that means the ACL is not going to have as much of an effect as I think people think it will on his play. And I would expect him to be PUP'd for the first few weeks, but I'll bet he comes back before the PUP time is even over. I'll bet he's back by week 4 or 5, and I'll bet he's in the starting lineup by week 7 or so.
There's 3 other players that missed all of last year, or most of last year. Receiver Brandon Tate and linebackers Tyrone McKenzie and Sean Crable. Should we expect anything out of them?
I'm writing off Crable at this point. I mean, if he can prove me wrong, that would be awesome. You don't like to see a guy not really ever get to have his NFL career. But he reminds me of a guy like Benny Joppru, who was a tight end that the Texans took in their first year. And that guy had season-ending injuries 3 out of 4 years. I mean, health is a skill, and some guys just don't have it. McKenzie, it was just 1 year, 1 ACL injury. So you'll have to see, I don't think he's proven yet that he's quote-unquote injury prone. I think you can expect from him what you would have expected last year as a rookie. I don't like him as much as I like Cunningham and Spikes as far as getting playing time, but, obviously he's a talented guy. Tate, they knew, was basically going to redshirt a year. When they took him last year, people already were saying this is a guy who could have been a first or a second round pick in the 2010 draft. And because of the ACL injury at Carolina, he dropped in the draft of the 3rd round and the Patriots snagged him. He was really always meant to be a 2010 high draft pick, basically. So I would not be surprised to see big things out of him, both as the return man, because even if Welker comes back, I don't think they're going to want to use him on punt returns. And, kickoff returns, who knows where Lawrence Maroney is in Belichick's doghouse from week to week. But also, I really would not be surprised to see him get that X-receiver position because he's had the year in the system that Price, the guy from Ohio, the rookie from Ohio, has not had. He certainly has speed that Torrey Holt does not have anymore. I would not be surprised to see him be a starting receiver from the start of the year.
You mentioned Price. This year's draft class comes in with 12 rookies. We have expectations for several of them, to say the least. They will get a lot of time this year. Is there any rookie from this class that you think will come from nowhere and catch our attention?
Well, high draft picks don't come from nowhere. But I'm a big believer in guys who have scouting reports that read like what Brandon Spikes' reads like. Okay, when you look back in NFL history at linebackers whose scouting reports said playmaker, instincts, great college production, lack of speed, you look at a bunch of guys that were underdrafted. That was what it read for Zach Thomas. That was what it read for London Fletcher. That was what it read for Sam Mills. That's what it read in some ways for Teddy Bruschi. I mean, those guys, on top of everything else, were undersized, right? And Spikes isn't even undersized. He's 6'2". I think Spikes is going to be a starter, and I think he's going to be a star in the NFL. You just do not find linebackers that make plays like that in the middle of a defense in college and then disappear in the NFL. It just doesn't happen. Those guys, those instincts are not measurable by... It's so funny. People argue sometimes about what is or is not measurable by statistics. And instincts are measurable by statistics. You call it counting tackles. But they're not measurable by combine drills. You can't run a 40 to tell whether a guy has the instincts to know where the ball's going or where the runner's going or to read a play. You can't do a cone drill to tell that. But Spikes has that, just like Zach Thomas did, just like London Fletcher does. And I'm a big believer in it.
Well, it's not going to be too long before camp is here, and before we know it, camp will be over. But we look forward to this time to really get a good look at these guys during camp. Aaron, I want to thank you for your time very much.
I think the biggest thing that Patriots fans need to remember this year is that it is a tough division, and you've got to have a lot of respect for the Jets, who I think are going to be better on offense, although it's unlikely they're going to be as good on defense. Miami is a well-run team. You just need to thank your lucky stars that Bill Belichick knows what he's doing, that Tom Brady is back, and that Buffalo is so horrible that they're really in a 3-team division.
Well, it looks like it may turn out to be that way. But before they get to the season, they have to get through camp. They got a lot of players on the team. A lot of them won't make it. So between now and then, we'll get to see who wins these battles during camp. For all my viewers, I'd like to thank you. My name is Randolph Charlatan.